Tonight, the Supreme Court and its 6-3 conservative bend.
We learned that Justice Amy Coney Barrett was not the judicial torpedo that a lot of Democrats believed she was going to be.
A look back at its latest term and surprising rulings. Plus, compromise on Capitol Hill. The bipartisan infrastructure deal moving forward, but could it still face roadblocks? And the U.S. economy showing robust second quarter growth. Will it continue? And what about inflation and the growing cost of everyday goods? All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The Supreme Court completes its first term with all three of President Trump's appointees on the bench. Good evening, I'm Jenna Browder. And that is where we begin tonight at the nation's highest court, which leans heavily conservative. But just how conservative? There were definitely some big surprises this term. Senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon joins us with tonight's top story. Jennifer?
Well, Jenna, the court's latest term has taught us that not all conservatives are created equally. Instead of a 6-3 divide between the conservative and liberal justices on the court, some of the court's major decisions have shown more of a 3-3-3 divide.
I think the most conservative members are Justice Thomas and probably next Justice Gorsuch. And close by is probably Justice Samuel Alito.
In the middle, making up a more centrist coalition, Chief Justice John Roberts, Brett Kavanaugh, and the newest justice, Amy Coney Barrett.
We learned that Justice Amy Coney Barrett was not the judicial torpedo that a lot of Democrats believed she was going to be on things like Obamacare.
In that case, led by the more centrist conservatives, the court chose consensus over striking at the heart of the matter. Likewise, in Fulton versus City of Philadelphia, the court ruled unanimously that the city was discriminating against a Catholic foster care agency, but stopped short of addressing the larger issue of religious liberty. That led a frustrated Justice Alito to write, "This decision might as well be written on the dissolving paper sold in magic shops."
Their job is to decide whatever case is before them and not create these cockamamie schemes of what will happen in a decade. I think that is a flawed understanding of judicial power.
A recent Gallup poll shows 49% of Americans approve of the job the Supreme Court is doing. Republicans and Democrats view it similarly, revealing Americans are both pleased and frustrated with its rulings. Finding that equilibrium of public opinion is what some observers say drives the middle of the court to issue narrow opinions and decline some controversial issues. Roberts, Kavanaugh, and Barrett joined the three liberal justices to refuse hearing the case of Barronelle Stutzman, a Washington florist forced to use her art to celebrate a same-sex marriage. Meanwhile, Gorsuch joined the three centrists to block hearing a transgender bathroom case out of Virginia.
The court's conservatives, at least 3 or 4 of them, do not want to get bogged down in the transgender issue. I think they want to stay away from it. I think they're hoping it just goes away and just disappears. But and I know these things just don't vanish. They just sort of brew up and develop controversy year after year.
Still, next term, the court will tackle several hot-button issues like New York's handgun law and an abortion case out of Mississippi that strikes at the heart of Roe v. Wade.
The fact that they have relegated this decision to one question on whether or not pre-viability restrictions are constitutional indicates to us that they are going directly to the heart of the matter and will make a determination as to whether or not Roe was good law.
So how will this new alignment on the court play out? Blackman has a prediction.
I don't think there are enough judges with the backbone to do it.
We will see. This case out of Mississippi is exactly what pro-life supporters have been hoping to use as a vehicle to overturn the constitutional right to abortion in this country, something that many scholars agree was just terrible case law to begin with. Jenna?
Jennifer, what's the strategy behind the more moderate wing of the court?
Yeah, well, observers say it looks like they're taking an incremental approach, baby steps to get the law to where they think it ought to be. So when they look at a case about religious liberty, instead of tackling the big issue of threats to religious liberty in this country, they narrow it and they look at something that just affects that locality. The problem is, in the meantime, you have Americans like Barronelle Stutzman, like Jack Phillips, the cake maker in Colorado, who are spending tens of thousands, millions of dollars in some cases on these court cases that take years of their life. And Josh Blackman in our interview called that arrogant on behalf of the justices.
Matt, it affects a lot of people. Jennifer, is there any danger as well in taking an incremental approach?
Sure. Well, I mean, look, there's no guarantee. And in fact, we know the court will not always have a 6-member majority. Justices die. Justice Scalia died recently, Justice Ginsburg. And so these are mortal people. Also, there are a lot of people who would like to pack the court, pass legislation, change the Constitution so that there could be more justices on the court. And also, the Constitution never changes. And so some scholars say, look, if you think that one thing is right, then you just need to get there instead of taking these baby steps.
All right, Jennifer Wishon, senior Washington correspondent, great reporting. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the battle over abortion, the House voting today to pass a bill that would allow U.S. tax dollars to pay for abortions worldwide. Among other things, the bill repeals what's known as the Helms Amendment. This measure ensures that taxpayer dollars are not used to fund abortions internationally. Democrats in the House call the Helms Amendment racist. One congresswoman saying it puts reproductive and economic freedom out of reach for women of color. A Marist poll from January shows 76% of Americans oppose federal funding of international abortion. Lawmakers are also debating the major issue of infrastructure. Last night, the Senate voting to move forward with the bipartisan deal. But some critics say it has too many pay-fors and budget gimmicks. Maya McGinnis, with the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, says she wants to see lawmakers agree on a major bill like this and be fiscally responsible. She says she likes that it has some sensible reforms to lower prescription drug prices, but it also hurts the price of gas and what would be inflation help. And another bill cleared the Senate today. It's a $2.1 billion emergency spending package that would prevent a funding crisis for Capitol Police. It also funds the evacuation and resettlement of Afghans who helped U.S. forces during the 20-year war in their homeland. Meanwhile, President Biden is calling on Congress to extend the eviction moratorium, which expires this weekend. His press office says due to the recent spread of the Delta variant, it's still needed to protect those most vulnerable, both in facing possible evictions and those who have not been vaccinated for COVID-19. To the economy, the number of Americans collecting unemployment benefits is down again. Claims dropped by 24,000 last week. That puts the number of jobless claims at 400,000, according to the Labor Department. A good sign for the economy. The peak was 900,000 in early January. The department says the declines have been steady since then, but are still high compared to historical standards. Mark Hamrick is a senior economic analyst for Bankrate, and he joins us now for more. Mark, welcome. Good to see you on this Thursday. Unemployment going down, but are you surprised it's not going down any faster with all of these signs that businesses are hiring?
There's little that truly surprises me these days, Jenna, just because we're in uncharted waters with respect to this pandemic and the reopening of the economy, the likes of which we've never experienced before. So I try to, let's say, associate with my observation of these things some degree of humility and understand that the economy is going to unfold at a pace of its own doing. But to your point, we'd love for the economy to essentially restore itself to its pre-pandemic condition. And that is what we got, in a sense, with the GDP reading today, which we may talk about here in a moment. But with respect to the job market, this is going to be a slower healing effort. We have a record number of job openings in this country, but many workers are either moving on to other employment opportunities over the past year, maybe more cautious about taking a job. And of course, we know we still have federal pandemic employment benefits that will be around until September.
Yeah. There are a lot of mixed signs for just the average American. Unemployment improving. New second quarter numbers show robust growth for the U.S. economy. But, Mark, we're still seeing inflation, and a lot of basic things, some of our most common goods, are very expensive right now. What are Americans supposed to think of this dichotomy?
Well, again, to go back to the unprecedented nature of it, we shut the economy down, as we all know, Jenna, and then we basically, in an almost explosive fashion, are trying to reopen it. And that's very difficult to do, as we're finding out. And so we've got cargo ships off the West Coast. We've got trains that basically have commitments for cargo to move all across the country, but simply can't get to all of that. And then there are the factories that are either being buffeted with problems with COVID outbreaks all around the world, with, for example, a backlog in demand for computer chips, which we need to build automobiles. And that's how you get to the shortages of automobiles for sale. So I think this is going to call for some patience and faith to get through this process, with the hope that, as the Federal Reserve officials are saying, the bulk of the inflation ought to be temporary, but also with the understanding that we haven't been through these kinds of choppy waters before, and we do need to be prepared. And as we like to say at Bankrate, one way to do that is to make sure we have sufficient emergency savings.
Yeah, just about 30 seconds left, Mark, but many employers are finding it hard to get people to work. What's happening with that? What's the latest there?
I would say that's one of the #1 stories of the moment, and we had more than 9 million job openings as of last count. It's most acute in leisure and hospitality, bars and restaurants, and it's going to take some time to work this out. It is definitely one of the major strains in the economy right now. The good news for workers, they've got a lot to shop from with respect to those openings, and they may be able to command a higher wage.
All right, Mark Hamrick with Bankrate. It's always good to see you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Jenna.
Meanwhile, the trial continues for Michigan farmers who were banned from their local farmers market because of their religious beliefs. Steve and Bridget Tenz own and operate Country Mill Farms in Charlotte, Michigan. In 2016, the couple was banned from East Lansing Farmers Market after refusing to allow same-sex weddings at their orchard. In a statement from Steve, quote, "This isn't just about our ability to sell at the farmers market. It's really about every American's right to make a living and not have to worry about being punished by the government." Coming up, in the eyes of some Olympians, it's more important than gold. That story after this.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN News Watch. Thanks for joining us. Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN News Watch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. Whoa! It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Welcome back. It is growing in popularity around the Summer Olympics. And it is something that many Olympians value as much as winning a medal. Faith Nation anchor John Jessup talked with one ministry leader about the games and something called the prayer advantage.
We really believe that prayer is very, very important. And the prayer advantage kind of came about as an idea of how is it that we as individual Christians can be supportive of these athletes who are on a world stage. And so what we did is we set up a series of interviews to, first of all, get to know them a little bit better, hear some of their story, and hear some ways that we could specifically pray for them. And then we engaged with the athletes as a part of their journey and kind of track along, like when they're performing, when they're in a position of being able to be part of the competition, and then be able to offer up prayer as they're performing right beforehand and kind of just tracking with them.
I like that engagement. So can you describe what this looks like? I believe you have a prayer over 5 athletes option, and then you also have something that's real time?
Yeah, the real-time prayer is what we started with, and we did that primarily during the Olympic trials here in the U.S. And the way that it worked is athletes were kind of in contact with us. We did the interview with them, got that prayer request. We tracked their schedule, and then we had people that were praying for the athletes, and we would send out via text message the prayer request from the athletes. And then the participants would have an opportunity to reply back. When they replied back, we compiled those replies together. Some of them were words of encouragement, sometimes scripture verses, just things that some of the participants wanted to pass on to the athlete. We compiled those and then sent it out to the athlete prior to their competition, and got some feedback from the athletes that it meant a lot to them. So that was how the prayer, the real-time prayer worked. And then the Pray for 5, we've got the database of most of the Olympic athletes, and if you go to the website, you can select 5, 10, 15, however many you want. And you can then have those, you can kind of adopt those athletes. And then over the course of the remaining days of the Olympics, you just pray for them. Like one of my people I'm praying for is Lily King. She's from Bloomington here where I live, where she went to school, and she lists this as her address. So I figured might as well pick somebody from the hometown. And so I've been able to track and pray kind of for her. She was competing yesterday and then today as well. And so just tracking with her, and that's part of the second aspect of adopting the athletes and praying for them.
I'm thinking about Simone Biles and her stunning decision to withdraw from the competition. Can you tell us what it means for the athletes when they know that people are praying for them? And in turn, what's the impact for those covering them in prayer?
Well, for the athletes, I know that there was a number of, or not a number, but there was some of the athletes that were a part of the Olympic trials who had, obviously the desire to make it to Tokyo, but they did not. And there was just a tremendous sense of peace. I remember Jenny Simpson, after her finish I think she finished 5th, I remember correctly, in the 1500, in her post-race interview, she even mentioned the fact that it meant so much to her to know that she had a group of people that were praying for her. And so I know for those athletes for whom we were engaged with, it really meant a lot to them, and I got that kind of feedback from them. For the people who are participating, I just found it to be a tremendous sense of, just encouragement to know that you could say something and it had the potential of being able to actually make it to the athlete that they could read prior to their performance.
Paul, if people want more information, where can they go?
The website is MYLC, stands for Making Your Life Count. So the letters MYLC.faith and then /prayer. And that'll be where you can go to learn about that. You could also text the word pray, P-R-A-Y, to 407-214-4900. 214-4900, 407.
All right. Paul Konstanski with crew, thank you again so much for being with us.
Up next, what a standoff between 2 Asian nations means for the U.S. and world.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path. Nigerian Christians
in Iran are routinely arrested.
Nepali Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Saturday night at 6 on the CBN News Channel. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Two Asian giants are facing off in the Himalayas, both with nuclear powers. George Thomas reports China and India are staring each other down at the border of their two countries with thousands of troops.
Just 1 year after a bloody dispute involving Indian and Chinese soldiers, both sides are now deploying more troops along the 2,000-mile border between the two countries.
Now we're seeing on the Chinese side roughly 200,000 troops, according to some estimates, flow into areas around the border.
And what's been seen as the biggest deployment in India's history, some 50,000 additional soldiers, are matching China's current troop strength in the area.
Sources tell us the threat has been clear and present. India's deployment is about preparedness rather than triggering hostility.
What's important is the sort of troops that they have. They have some pretty serious high-altitude fighters embedded among them. This is a serious deployment designed to try to make the PLA be very concerned about doing a land offensive again.
Both sides are said to be building new roads, bunkers, tunnels, runways, and moving in advanced military hardware. The Wall Street Journal reporting that China has deployed surface-to-air missiles and anti-missile batteries, while India has beefed up its air force.
Both India and China are nuclear-armed countries, and so if a confrontation does take place on that border, it would be problematic for the world and for the United States.
6 decades after the Sino-Indian War, the world's two most populated countries are still going at it in the Himalayas.
The last clash coming in June 2020, when Chinese soldiers took several square miles of Indian territory in the Galwan Valley. Indian soldiers fought back, losing 20 of their own. China says 4 of its men died, though that number is thought to be much higher. It was the deadliest incident between the Asian giants in 45 years. Dozens of high-level talks since then have failed to calm growing tensions between Beijing and New Delhi.
The words and deeds of major military and political officials should help ease the situation and increase mutual trust between the two sides.
But it hasn't, leaving India increasingly mistrustful of a powerful neighbor that's pursuing regional and global ambitions.
The overt goal of the Chinese Communist Party is global hegemony, and that begins in the Indo-Pacific. Within the Indo-Pacific region, the biggest counter to their narrative is India. And the goal is basically to fragment and render India inoperative, because India is the best hope for other democracies in the region to try to withstand China's aggressive expansion.
In the past year, Beijing has expanded political and economic fights, spreading to Vietnam, Philippines, Bhutan, Nepal, Australia, and Indonesia.
This is not a one-off that China is only threatening India. This is part of Chinese aggressive behavior against all its neighbors, against any country it considers a rival.
Indo-China watchers say it's all part of President Xi Jinping's goal to also drive a wedge between Washington and New Delhi.
what's very important from an American perspective is to understand that there is an active political warfare campaign designed to make us distrust and dislike India, so that India and the U.S. can't come together to fight what is an existential threat for both of us, which is the Chinese Communist Party.
Meanwhile, top Indian military commanders openly talk about their concerns of a simultaneous conflict with arch-rival Pakistan on its western flank and China to the east. Both countries continue to forge deep military and strategic ties.
You could end up in a two-front war. You could end up in a war in which, Pakistan engages in a conflict and then China opportunistically goes in to try and seize a bit of territory. So Indian forces are much more stressed now than they were, I think, even a few years ago.
Experts now worry that with these additional troop deployments come possibilities of a miscalculation on either side that could result in more deadly clashes. George Thomas, CBN News.
Still ahead, the presence of God felt by thousands at a major worship event with some big names.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
yes,
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link. Tuesday morning at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Finally tonight, the presence of God coming on thick in Southern California. This weekend, more than 20,000 volunteers were invited to the Freedom Experience. And there were some big names. Justin Bieber headlined the event, along with Carrie Job and her husband. They led thousands to lift their hands, many for the first time. Also there, Tori Kelly, Jaden Smith, and Chance the Rapper. Justin Bieber did remind the crowd that they were experiencing the presence of God. Looks like it was on pretty thick there, so good for them. Looked like fun.